You are listening to the Outside the Boards podcast. I'm Danny O'Leary. For most of my professional career, I have worked in mainstream sports for some of the world's leading sports organizations and properties and blue-chip brands, helping to create award-winning omni-channel marketing campaigns, result-driven sales strategies, and impactful brand-building initiatives. But all that work doesn't compare to the fun, excitement, and challenges I've been fortunate to experience working for the king of all sports, polo. For nearly a decade, I've put my heart and ambition into helping advance the sport of polo. I've made lifelong friendships, met some incredible people, traveled to memorable polo destinations, and heard the craziest stories. My goal is to share these people, places, and stories with you and provide a unique behind-the-scenes perspective of the game that breaks all the common stereotypes, all while discussing key issues affecting the sport today and the constructive sharing of ideas, insights, solutions, and best case studies for the purpose of advancing polo globally. Every week, I will have honest conversations with polo industry leaders, enthusiasts, and awe-inspiring people who make this sport great and fun to be around. I hope through their knowledge and their unique perspectives, they will motivate and inspire you. Together, we will explore ways you can make small tweaks to boost your polo business, whether you are a club, event, team, or player, that will amount to big changes in revenue, participation, attendance, and exposure. Saddle up. Welcome to Outside the Boards with me, Daniel Leary. Hi everyone, Danny O'Leary here. Hope you all had a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. We are now officially in the holiday season. The house is lit and the tree is up. Just need to buy and wrap presents. Lots of great polo going on in Argentina, and the United States high goal season in Wellington, Florida is just around the corner, beginning the first week of January with the Joe Barry Cup, shortly followed by the beginning of the Gauntlet of Polo in February. My guest on this episode of Outside the Boards is the smart and talented Shannon Stilson. Shannon is the Assistant Vice President of Marketing for USPA Global Licensing and for the newly created Global Polo Entertainment, which serves as the governing body's marketing division. Shannon was recruited in 2015 to lead the new direction of the business of polo in the U.S. and promote the global authentic connection to the sport for the official apparel brand, US Polo ASSN. With Shannon's influence and support, the USPA created Global Polo Entertainment, an entity designed to house new brand platforms, including the first ever 3-part high goal event series that we all know of, the Gauntlet of Polo. This led to the restructuring and reinvigorating of USPA's relationship with its largest global media partner, Eurosport, and domestic partner, CBS Sports, to support the Gauntlet's final event, the US Open Polo Championship. Shannon helped revamp these media partnership structures to significantly increase live and live-to-tape coverage, enhance live streaming channels, and digital promotional efforts, including the recent launch of the Global Polo Network. Shannon's career didn't begin with polo or any other type of equestrian sport for that matter. Her background is rooted in golf, having worked for the PGA Tour, PGA of America, both headquartered in Florida, and respected golf, event, and marketing agencies. I had the privilege of getting to know Shannon over the past few years with the sharing of ideas and discussing of issues and trends affecting the sport as well as new opportunities. We share similar professional experiences and industry colleagues from our pre-polo careers, which is why I'm excited to have Shannon on this episode because she comes from mainstream sports and, like me, is using that knowledge and experience to help advance polo. I'm honored to call Shannon my friend and excited to see her and the Global Polo Entertainment team do exciting things for the sport of polo. So let's get started, everyone. Enjoy. Well, Shannon, I am super excited to have you on as one of my guests for my podcast. Why I want to have you on is for a variety of reasons, but the most part is that you are not an equestrian person. You are not a polo person. You weren't born into the sport. You don't have decades of experience riding or being involved in the sport, either as a groom or club owner or anything like that. And that's what I absolutely love about you because you come from the sports industry, and prior to the USPA, you have worked in golf, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But you're obviously in the sports industry, and you're in mainstream sports, and you're able to apply that expertise and knowledge and apply it to a sport like polo and take all those best case studies of what you learned and try them to make it work in a sport as unique as ours. And You and I come from that background. You actually know or have worked with companies I've worked for or know a number of colleagues that I have worked with, such as International Management Group or Intersport and what have you. So I want to kind of go down that rabbit hole, if you will, in drawing on your expertise, your comparisons with other industries within sports, as well as what you are working on within global licensing as the Assistant Vice President of Marketing. So you come from the golf industry, correct?
Right.
I think you started with the PGA Tour. Is that right?
Yes, I started my career in 2007 at the PGA Tour as an assistant marketing sponsorship person.
And you didn't play golf, did you? Or are you an avid golfer? No.
No, and the funny thing is that I know you'll take us there, but with the tour, it's all about the business. It's all about the revenue. It's all about the sponsors. And when you work for PGA of America, which is a separate organization, they're all about the golf. It's all about playing golf. You almost can't work there if you don't play the sport. So I did pick it up near the end, but it's really about the business of the sport that I really love.
Oftentimes when I talk to people, people think that the PGA of America and PGA Tour are one of the same things. They're not.
Exactly.
So can you differentiate the two?
Yes. PGA of America is a members organization that really is dedicated to professional golfers. They teach the game, they run clubs, they participate in tournaments, but not necessarily at the level that the PGA Tour provides. They run one of the five majors, the PGA Championship, and they also own part of the Ryder Cup with the European Tour as well. So that's PGA of America membership organization, and they have 25,000 members. And then the PGA Tour is a for profit entity that creates tournaments for players to play in. And they really are, we call them the celebrities of golf, right? They're the people who have to get their PGA Tour card to actually play in these year round tournaments to make money. And there are some PGA professionals that play at that level. And the PGA of America provides opportunities for the golfers to play additionally. But the majority of them are people who dedicate their lives to playing the sport.
And how did golf kind of fall into your lap?
I was hoping you would ask that.
Don't people in the sports industry love talking about themselves and how they got to
Yes, we all do, 100%. Every part of my life has been very serendipitous. I met my husband because I missed a cruise. I met the guy who gave me an opportunity at the PGA Tour because I didn't go to the career fair that day when they were there because I was too nervous. So I went to work that night. I was actually bartending at Bonefish Grill, and I was management and doing a bunch of other stuff with Outback Steakhouse for about 10 years, doing nationwide coordinating of brand new stores and all different types of things. But I went to work that night and I met a guy named Rick Clarkson who had never come there before. I had already worked there for 4 years. And he was like, "Well, I'll give you a chance. You seem like a nice person. Send me your resume." So I got the opportunity to meet with several different departments, and my major was in marketing. And I knew that I really wanted to do marketing from what I was doing with Bonefish in the past couple of years. And I got the opportunity at a really low level. I didn't even make enough money to make ends meet, honestly, at an entry level position. So I kept bartending and I worked at the PGA Tour together for like 2 years until I could stop working at Bonefish.
I did not know you worked at Bonefish.
Yeah. OSI for 10 years. I loved that company. They have a lot of the same values as the tour. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to work for a great brand. I
Hmm.
worked for brands that were honest, that led with integrity, that really treated their employees well and their customers well. And we really believed in providing the very best. And that's something that the PGA Tour did as well. And that's why I saw a lot of synergies between the two companies. Even honestly, I grew up with not a lot of money in a really rural area. First time person going to college. I put myself through school And I didn't really know a lot about golf, honestly. They didn't play golf where I was from. Definitely didn't play polo, so we'll get to that. I was really excited to start working for an organization and doing something that I loved, which was marketing. So,
Are you originally from Florida?
yes, born and raised.
In North Florida?
Daytona Beach, I was born, but born from an entire family of Midwesterners. So we're all Illinois based. Chicago is where my family calls home, and Downers Grove.
Oh, all right.
Got those Midwest roots of you work harder than you should and you never call out sick. And I think this coronavirus has been hard for all the people in the Midwest because they're used to going to work no matter what.
Yeah. No, I agree. My wife being an attorney and everything, it's kind of got under her skin a little bit and she's had to adapt. But no, I agree. I mean, having worked in New York and Chicago, big city workers and everything,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of their leisure is their work in a way, or there's no time for leisure.
Yeah.
So yeah, no question about it. So you started at the PGA Tour. What did you do for them?
So I started in the sponsorship marketing department, basically the area where the sales team sells the sponsors. And then it was my job to execute against the assets. So I had about 12 corporate sponsors that I had to deliver their assets across all of these PGA Tour events. And it was really intimidating, honestly, coming from the hospitality industry, just graduating from college. Being a little later, also, I was already 27 by the time I started at the tour in my first career job or my career role. It was intimidating working with all these blue chip brands and people who were spending significant money. I'm talking like a base sponsorship's $5 million. And
Mm-hmm.
I was working with sponsors that were spending upwards of 20 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot different playing field when you realize that much is on the line. But it was good because I got to do a lot and we were kind of the money generating group. I started there and then after a year I was promoted to the sales department. So I started doing new business development. And I really liked that too, but it wasn't that instant gratification that you get from sponsorship management.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to corporate marketing. That's what they call it, corporate marketing at the PGA Tour. It's basically sponsorship management.
And then you went to PGA of America, correct? Or were you somewhere else between?
So I got to try out the agency world, a small boutique agency in Palm Beach. My husband had just graduated from engineering school and he took a job with Sikorsky, which is here in Palm Beach. And I thought it would be a total shoe in to, just transition right over to PGA of America, not knowing actually that the two companies don't really like each other that much. Because the story of the tour and PGA is that they were once one organization.
Mm-hmm.
And PGA of America, being a membership organization, really only cared about making sure that their members were happy and they had whatever they needed, the education and the support. But the people who wanted to lead the PGA Tour really thought it could become a commercially viable sport. So they split off, and the PGA of America said, okay, well, you have to pay us a royalty for our name.
Uh-huh.
So the PGA Tour pays the PGA of America a royalty for using the PGA name. It's so funny in the industry. It's like, we're the tour, we're not the PGA. And then the
Mm-hmm.
PGA is like, we're the PGA,
Yeah.
so it's like there's this infighting between the two. But so my husband took a job and I got to work on some really cool projects with this little boutique agency called JP Sports and Entertainment. And they'd been running the Michael Jordan Celebrity Invitational for like 10 years by the time I had gotten there.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a bad gig, right? Professional athletes and beautiful golf courses in Las Vegas. We were at the very private and coveted Shadow Creek, the location that many, many Hollywood movie
Yeah,
stars
sure.
and professional players play at. So I ran that. I was actually the head of sales and I did a little bit of the sponsorship management as well. And then we also worked on an event for Native American group called Nota Begay Foundation. We did some other stuff too, but that was really the big main focus for me. So I was there for a little over a year, and then PGA of America finally called and said, "We have a spot for you." And I was like, "See you later, small agency."
Was the agency exclusive to golf for the most part?
No, it just, you know what happens, I think, in indie business, you wind up being really good at something, so people don't let you try out other stuff.
Hmm.
They've actually expanded a lot now, but their real core business is foundational work and helping
Oh,
athletes
no kidding. Okay.
deliver events through charitable mechanisms to raise money.
Which makes sense with the Michael Jordan outing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I think it's Derek Jeter's.
Okay. So it just
So it's still
transitioned to a
happening.
different athlete, but it's
Yep, exactly.
same charity and everything?
Yep.
Okay. Here's another tricky question for you. What's the difference between the PGA of America and the USGA?
So the USGA makes the rules of the game. It's funny how faction golf is. And, we talk a lot about how polo, if we could just all work together, we could be more successful, right?
Hmm.
Golf hasn't done a great job of that. But I will say over the past 15 years, they've had some amazing leaders that have really pushed the USGA, PGA, the PGA Tour, Augusta National to all work together to build a better common denominator for people entering the sport. At the end of the day, their core mission outside of generating revenue for, most of them is really just exposing the game to more people. That's really at the heart of it because
Yeah.
there's so many great things. And I think this is something about polo too that a lot of people don't know, but there's so many great things that come from the sport: integrity, leadership, sportsmanship, just a sense of treating someone else with respect. And a lot of those same qualities you find in polo. And I know you've spoken with Kareem about his great program that he works with Leslie with Work to Ride. It shows that when you have a commonality with someone and you're able to build on that, it really builds somebody's character and makes them
Hmm.
just a better person, really, in life.
Yeah. The people in polo, I love them to death.
Um,
Oftentimes, people that I meet through my friends or my wife's friends, and they talk about polo, and their first impression is the royal
yeah.
family or didn't so and so do it. There's a level or perception of people who play polo or polo in itself. It's an arrogant
But
sport.
it's so opposite.
It is the
It's
opposite.
so
And
opposite.
and I often tell people, I'm like, no offense, but some of the mainstream sports that you watch, I find to be far more arrogant
Yeah.
than polo
Yeah.
is. And if you sit and go to the corner of a team and hang out with, Mark Gansey or Melissa Gansey or my boss, Jim Jury, you'll find that they're some of the most humble people,
Yes.
that you can crack a beer open, despite being captains of industry in their respective fields, they're the most laid back people
Yeah.
I feel like I've ever met. And you can talk to them about anything.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you touched on that because that is 100% absolutely true. So the people in the sport are fantastic. I love them. They're some of my best friends. I'm glad to call some of these people lifelong friends that have got my back. I got their back,
Yeah.
and they're not arrogant whatsoever. Sometimes up here in Chicago, there's a little bit of a rift between golf and polo in a way, a little bit of different personalities in a way. I forget who coined kind of the phrase, a polo player has hot blood and a cool mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost the opposite. It's like these are hot blood individuals that play this sport.
Yeah.
Golf might be a little bit of the cold blood
Yeah.
because it's much more leisurely. It's laid back. You have 3 6 hours of the day to golf 9 or 18 holes
Yeah.
versus someone who's on a horse and going 30 miles per hour trying to hit a ball that's the size of a baseball
Mhm.
with a 55-inch mallet. I mean, it's apples to oranges.
While also holding the reins, not having anything to hold on to except for your legs squeezing the saddle and then holding on to a whip if you have it too. It's mind boggling to me the amount of things a polo player has to do in order to play. And
Hmm.
the mental acuity that it takes is just really fascinating. And I think that's why we have such successful A type personality people that play the sport because that's their release. I mean, you talk to most polo people and they are so calm. It's very interesting.
You hit on another thing, the mental capacity that it takes to play the game.
Yeah.
How many sensories are going off at one time just to play the sport
Hmm.
versus something like golf or anything else.
Yeah.
And when you look at the mental capacity it takes, it is a release from people who, let's say, are CEOs or captains of industry, where so much attention is dedicated to that particular subject.
Yeah.
And they need that 100% release into something else. Polo is going to achieve that for you. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Everything's on the side. Like you don't even have the ability to think of anything else. And I think that you don't find that in life, that escape to be able to really do something and not be thinking about something else besides what you're doing at that current moment. It is like the exact mindfulness practice that everyone should figure out to tap in.
Hmm. And I encourage everyone to even try, put yourself into that position in itself,
Yep.
which is why I always feel polo, I would categorize as an adrenaline sport.
Yes.
I feel as though the amount of attention and mental capacity that needs and focus, you might as well put Alex Honnold kind of in the same category, the guy who climbed El
Yeah.
Capitan solo,
Yeah.
or the people who do heliskiing or things like that, or even motorsports athletes, the level of danger that and focus that they need to accomplish their task is at such a heightened level compared to anything else,
Yep.
where they cannot be distracted whatsoever. I remember feeling like that for the very first time. Matt Baker and some of the guys from who developed Polo Channel had that same mindset. Like, this is an adrenaline sport. Red Bull should be sponsoring this.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So then we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but how did polo fall in your lap of all things? So you go from one stick and ball to another stick and ball.
Yeah. So I told you at the beginning, right, that my life has always been somewhat serendipitous. I was at the PGA of America and I really wanted to grow and become more of an executive team member. And unfortunately, not to say anything bad about golf, but honestly, it's a man's world and there aren't, at least when I was there, I mean, it's been 6 years now, but there are not a lot of opportunities for women. They say that there are, but to just be able to finally say it, there really aren't. They pick and choose who they want, and it's not really about how hard you work. It's really who you know. But to your question, I was looking for a new position for a long time because I just wanted to feel valued and supported, and I wanted to feel like what I was doing mattered. So I actually took a job at ADT, the security company, in like real traditional marketing. And I was the current customer marketing executive who was managing all of the current customers. I got a call from a recruiter saying that they wanted to hire me. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And then when I found out about the role, it was the brand actually that brought the opportunity to me, US Polo ASSN. And I knew the brand. I didn't know it was connected to the sport of polo. I didn't even know what polo was really. Again, coming from a really small town, I told myself if I found a sign that told me that I needed to take this job. So the little town that I grew up in near Daytona is called Pearson. And the stadium for IPC is on Pearson Road. So I was like, if that's not a good enough sign,
Mm-hmm.
like Pearson is not a common name. I told myself I needed 3 signs. So, second, I was at the dentist's office and there was a card that had polo players playing. And the woman who was there said, yeah, that's been there only for a couple weeks or something like that. And then I saw someone wearing a polo shirt, which was kind of like just to give me, like, okay, I'll take it. But that's how I got into it. I was recruited because of my experience with professional golf and David Cummings, whose vision of really trying to build a commercially viable sport for the USPA moved the headquarters of US Polo ASSN from Kentucky to West Palm Beach, obviously to be closer to the sport. But it was always his vision of us working closer together, us building projects together. And I think that we've been incredibly successful the last 5 years working with the USPA and their leadership team. And we've made a lot of changes and we've gone through a lot of heartache. And I think you do that with any business. But if it wasn't for David, I wouldn't be here. And I have to
Hmm.
say that of everything that I said about PGA, I've never experienced that in polo. The people in polo, I think people look at it as it's a really wealthy sport. And I think, yeah, it is. You do need money to play. But the people that are in the sport that have money, you would never know it. And the people in golf
Hmm.
that do have money, you know it because they
You
have
know
it
it.
and they drive around and they're pretentious. And it's not everybody, but it's kind of a stereotype.
Yeah, you hit it on the button. And it's important to break those stereotypes down because they're frustrating to hear.
Yeah.
It's like watching Nacho Fergasas during an interview. And I don't know if you've watched his past interviews, but you can see his face have a frustrated
Yeah.
look when all of a sudden the interviewer starts to go down this path of the common stereotypes polo.
Yeah.
And all he wants to talk about is the sport. I want to talk about one thing and we're going down this path. And that's the trouble I have with people when I talk about it all the time. It's just like, dude, let's focus on the game, man.
Yeah.
That's where it is. And all the people that I have, my colleagues, former colleagues that have come out and come to a polo match, their mouths drop.
Yeah.
They have an entirely new respect for the game. And I always encourage them, especially those who are still in the work in the golf industry. It's like, look, you're going down to Florida, swing by IPC, check out the professional side of our game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to be amazed and your mouth is going to drop figuring out how these players can do what they can do on a horse.
Right. Exactly.
And you're going to think, this is not a bunch of guys playing croquet on horseback. This is balls to the wall, 30 miles per hour, defying gravity, and able to hit something that is itty bitty in comparison to the horse and the distance that you're away from it.
Yeah.
And I would take any of these athletes and put them up against any professional athlete any day of the week. I really would.
100%.
And that's why I'm still in it. That's why I still love the game.
You play? I think I've asked you that before.
The story goes I was playing and I was with the USPA and I was getting married and my wife put down the foot and said, you're going to stop playing because she has been to too many polo events
Oh,
at that point to see the guy with an occasional broken arm or a busted eye socket or a glass eye and being like, hell no, you're not walking down the aisle or being in any pictures bruised
right.
in any way.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, it's been difficult to get into it because I'll be honest with you, my focus is so 100% during Chicago's polo season that by the time it's over, I'm so exhausted that I want to take a break. But I do have that eagerness to just jump back on the horse, just stick and ball, ride a little bit, get out there kind of as a breather and or an escape,
Yeah.
which is why people already do it. But slowly but surely it's happening. But my God, I do love the game. I can remember the day that I picked up a mallet for the first time and rode into arena that hit all the adrenaline buttons that you never even had before, and you're hooked. So that narrative and messaging around getting hooked the first time that you put a mallet in your hand, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
There really is. So now what are you doing with the global licensing?
So, USPA Global Licensing, I head up our sports marketing division and I really wear two hats. I manage all of my group does. I have two people on my direct team that helps me with both sides of the business. US Polo ASSN, which is the authentic brand of the sport of polo, the only one of 39 other polo brands that is directly connected to the sport. We support and sponsor polo clubs in the United States as well as internationally because we're in over 180 countries worldwide. So it's really important for us to support our licensees that are in, some of our top markets like India, Turkey, England's growing, China's growing. What I've been most pleased with, and it's been a really great success, is the development of our college program. And that was really developed by Michael Prince, our CEO, who really knew that our apparel consumer is a millennial. So why are we not doing more for the college program that the USPA has? So we launched a really great program last year where we had over 40 clubs that are USPA college clubs participate, and we outfitted them with official jerseys and whites, and we gave them some money as well just to kind of support the club. So that's one side of the business. It's all sponsorship marketing for US Polo ASFN, whether it's an event like Centabale with the royal family, or it's the college program, or it's supporting all of our USPA clubs. And then on the other hand, I directly support initiatives that benefit the sport of polo. So I work with Bob Putz and his team and Matt Barron in the communications department with developing projects like the Gauntlet of Polo and Global Polo TV, which is our new venture that we just started in January.
It makes you wonder why global licensing and the governing body were separated to begin with at one point.
Yeah.
It's like, why were you guys distanced from each other to begin with? I don't get
Yeah.
it.
I think there's a lot of similarities, honestly, between like what happened with the PGA and what happened with the PGA Tour.
Mhm.
Every day I go to work, my mission is to generate revenue or to build awareness for the sport. And every day Bob and his team gets up, they have to think about their member and they have to think about what's good for the sport and the rules. So we
Mhm.
have different missions. And I think that sometimes your mission can bog other people's down if it's not your own mission.
Yeah.
I believe we finally have gotten into a really good groove since we launched Gauntlet of Polo. We're working really, really well together, and everyone knows what lane they're supposed to be in.
Mhm.
It's made it a lot easier for sure.
What are the challenges do you encounter on a daily basis?
You know, the biggest challenges that I see in polo is the divisive nature between some of the clubs. And I think that has to go back to there's a lot of competition in the Florida market. I don't think you see that in many markets. And we have some of the best polo patrons in Wellington that are trying to grow the game, trying to create tournaments, trying to build consumer awareness. And instead of working together, we've been working separately. And I think that with Stuart Armstrong's leadership at the USPA, his main goal and initiative is to try to really focus on having us work together in a collaborative way that makes sense to grow patrons and to grow the sport and make the sport healthy, which is their mission. And we hope to create commercially viable things like Global Polo TV and Gauntlet of Polo that non polo players will find interesting.
Mhm.
That's our main mission.
I think any club or club collective of some kind, like here up in Chicago Polo Association, we had the mindset of both. We want to obviously meet the demands of its members, its players, its patrons, while also at the same time find certain synergies and collaborativeness to bring awareness to the sport
Yeah.
at the same time, because we want to make sure that people are happy and they continue to play, they continue to invest, but at the same time, we need to have a channel in which we can bring awareness to keep the system of more players coming in and just feeding the overall ecosystem at the end of the day,
Yeah.
whether that be players themselves or just people who are tuning in, people who have an appetite just to watch it and be around horses and be around the players and everything, which ultimately turns into a commercially viable property at the end. So, do you find yourself working with a lot of clubs and more with the USPA, working with Bob Putz and managing kind of their expectations and leveraging your expertise in any sort of way?
I did in the beginning. I provided some of my marketing experience for clubs, but it became again like we really needed to understand whose lane did we need to be in. And the
Hmm.
reason I was hired really was to generate revenue, create a connection between the sport and the brand. And then also within recently, the last couple of years, is build these types of products that non polo people will like. But what I will say is that the sport does a really great job of connecting with the clubs. From what I've seen, I think that I'd really love for them to help the clubs with marketing initiatives more. And I think that I could help with that, or we could get someone professionally to help. But the PGA of America did a really great initiative. I think it was a couple years before I left, but they did a research study on why people were not going to golf clubs. And, the number one reason is because people think that when you hear club, that it's private and they're not invited. And then there's
Hmm.
all that intimidation factor, right? What do I wear? What do I drive? How much is it going to cost? Do I need cash? Do I need a card?
Yeah.
None of those questions are answered for the novice, right? And there's no playbook that's been written for polo clubs. And I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it with Chicago. But a lot of times, what, in my opinion, happens is you have a club, and the club was developed because you had enough interest in people playing polo, right? And then you wear two hats, like you said. You wear that membership hat where you have to make sure that the members and the players are happy, but you also have to be financially stable and you have to
Hmm.
deliver assets to sponsors that want it. And it takes two different mindsets to do that. A polo manager cannot, in my opinion, of what I've seen, and I don't think they want to anyway, they don't want to deal with sponsors. They don't want to deal with consumers. They want to decide where the horses are going to come in, and they want to decide what field you're going to use and what format and when's the draw party and all the really polo heavy stuff. So
Yeah.
I believe that there's a lack of marketing experience. I did a sponsorship webinar with Robin Sanchez, and I was excited because that's really at the heart of where my career started. But it's overwhelming and it's a full time job just to do sponsorship, let alone like marketing and managing the club and
Hmm.
doing media, getting people to come out and cover the game. So I think, in my opinion, the sport really needs a playbook for marketing, and it's how to invite people out, how to retain them, how to follow up, how to make more options for non polo people. Because what happens is I'm working at a very national level, right? My job isn't to get down in the weeds on this club or that club. My job is to create a halo effect from our broadcast to push those people that are interested into the sport. And I always say there's lots of different ways that people can get involved. I mean, if you have people watching the game, attending a game, hopefully they'll pick up the game if they really love the sport. But that is a
Hmm.
huge conversion for a consumer. So
It is. Yeah.
look at the marketing funnel, the sport has to have several different marketing funnels because they have several different customers. But that's just my opinion. And I think that if they had patience and the willingness and the desire to develop a playbook that would make it easy, I think it would be really welcomed. And I think consumers want it. The people we talk to, I mean, I've been in conversations with American Express and Town and Country and big brands, Chase Bank, they're all interested in polo, but they're so scared that they don't know. So I think we need to do a better job of educating people about the sport and the accessibility of it.
This podcast episode is presented by Global Polo TV. The world's premier destination for video on-demand polo content has arrived. Now you can watch the nation's best live and archived tournament matches and compelling behind-the-scenes content from anywhere at any time and on any digital device. Global Polo TV has over 9,000 subscribers, 200 plus hours of live broadcasted games, and over 500 hours of produced content from weekly shows to in-depth features. Sign up today. All on-demand polo games and content are free. Want to watch official USPA games live? Then get your Polo Pass today by visiting globalpolo.com so as not to miss this year's high goal season and upcoming 2021 Gauntlet of Polo. Welcome to Global Polo TV. You hit on a number of different things. The first one being, the club aspect. At Oakbrook, we actually try not to use the word club when we can.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it implies membership. It implies an invitation of some kind. And that's not true. And polo is very accessible. And I think we've proven that up here. No question about it. I mean, you look at some of our events and the diversity and families, kids, young professionals, so many different walks of life come to our events to experience it. And it's interesting that kind of one word can, I agree that yeah, clubs do need a playbook. The responsibilities of a general manager that they have to run a polo club, its members, the horses, the grooms, everything that's involved is a full-time job. So the ability to change your mind on a dime to start thinking about sales and marketing and what have you is difficult. There's no question about it
Yeah.
because that requires a lot of time. I mean, for me, it's a full time job. It's year round. You're constantly engaging with sponsors, thinking of campaigns, budgeting for them, how are you going to pay for them in order to keep new players coming in, as well as keeping your audience engaged throughout the year and attending events and growing ticket sales, and the list goes on and on. And in terms of the sponsorship, sponsors are scared and they're unknowledgeable about something. And I constantly, when I'm having to sell sponsors, I always have to draw on comparisons
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what they're already investing in.
Yep.
What are you doing here? All right, well, that's how it's molded, or that's how it mirrors here in the world of polo. To really educate people. And essentially, whatever the Cubs or the White Sox, in terms of how they're selling it, is to adapt that. And that's how you need to sell polo. Although polo kind of is a category and it's a unique story of its own, but it's a very attractive story. There's no question about it. And even in today's pandemic with COVID-19, there's a silver lining to this. In Chicago, we were literally the only live sports you could attend. Only.
Wow.
I think the Rosemont, Hot Dogs, which is a minor league baseball team, you could sit in their stands, but it was very scarce and people are incredibly spread out. But for the most part, we were the only game in town. And, we leveraged that opportunity for people to get outside and safely watch a sport and enjoy a picnic and beverage and dress up. And, as if you're kind of going to the Kentucky Derby, we had I think it was a WGN reporter that came out and she coined it very well. It was like going to Arlington Park as well as Ravinia, which is a popular outdoor concert venue here.
Yeah.
To kind of combine the two. They all got hooked. They came out to like 2 or 3 events during our season just as spectators to get out of the house.
You somewhat did the playbook on reopening, and it was so stressful. It was like the heart of everything that was happening. And I remember talking to you during that time, and I know you worked really hard to make that happen. So, congratulations to you on being one of the first to open back up.
No, I appreciate it. And we did it without having to pull any strings.
Exactly.
Because I think our governor, he has a place in Wellington, I believe.
Oh, really?
And people are like, oh, he's from the equestrian world. I just want to make sure we did not pull any strings whatsoever. We did this completely the old fashioned way.
Yeah.
We knew that we had enough going for us to educate and sell polo, that we are completely different from anything else out there. Again, going back to our earlier conversation, that people had a very false perception as to what polo is and how it operates.
Yep.
That essentially, look, we're going to educate you. We're going to set the standard that we can do this completely safely. Whereas your popular sports, unfortunately, cannot. So, I hope that clubs take advantage of this opportunity, because it is a fantastic way, ironically, to share polo's story in a way. And we got a lot of media attention as a result of that. I mean, we got to the point where I think our last 6 events of the season, we had Sunday matches. They're getting sold out by Wednesday and Thursday. That's never happened to us before.
That's amazing.
Like, I would watch my phone and be like, VIP sold out, and it would sold out like in 2 hours.
I remember Greenwich told me that they had a limited amount of people that could come on site, and they had friends of theirs calling and saying, can you please get me a ticket? They're like,
Yes.
no, it's like, it's capped.
It's capped. We had a waiting list too. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I hope clubs take advantage of that. There's a great message to be told here. I hope even global licensing and the governing body take advantage of that, because there's a good chance that we're going to be at certain limits and guidelines, even going into next summer, with the vaccine that's coming out. And polo, hey, we're going strong. I mean, I know there's a recent article about Chicago Polo in the Polo Players Edition magazine, that despite everything that's going on, we had one of our most successful seasons in the last 3 or 4 years.
That's really cool.
So it's great. And again, really hoping that clubs take advantage of it, as well as the governing body to take advantage of it as well. Going back to your work with the global licensing, so you're obviously working on a number of projects. And it sounds like the first one you were kind of tasked with collaboration with the governing body was that Gauntlet of Polo. How did that kind of come about?
So the Gauntlet of Polo was a decision between the USPA and really David and IPC to really stimulate the sport. In Wellington, unfortunately, it's just become so expensive to play polo at the level that we had it. And I don't think that I wasn't privy to all the conversations during that time, but we really wanted to increase the number of teams. And we did. We're so excited that back in 2017, we had the same teams that we had from 2016. And in 2016, we had the same teams that we had in 2015. So when we launched this thing in, I guess it was 2019, when we launched Gauntlet of Polo, we had 16 teams sign up to play at the 22 goal level, which is pretty impressive. Lots of teams that we had never seen, some teams that came from the 18 goal, but a lot of new teams. And even in 2019, we had 14 teams. Almost all of them came back. And then even this year with COVID and the uncertainty about what's going to happen during the fall season, we have 9 teams now. So we really believe that what we wanted to do with the Gauntlet of Polo, the purpose of it was to take the 3 best tournaments that the United States Polo Association had and combine them to make a series that consumers could follow and understand. And we created the Gauntlet trophy, the Gauntlet name, and provided the prize money together with IPC in order to build something interesting and catchy to non-polo fans. So we really had the 2 part of stimulating competition, really bringing back that camaraderie between the teams, because that's something that's been lacking, unfortunately. And we were actually just talking about that the other day, that polo is rooted in family, tradition, people looking out for other people, giving, generosity. And it's unfortunately at this highest level has turned into don't talk to my pro, don't look at my pro,
Yeah.
pros, then don't talk to my patron. So it becomes a little bit challenging for sure. So we hoped that through the gauntlet, we would make changes, and we believe that we did. And then even the media, they're like, wow, check out this Gauntlet of Polo $1 million prize purse. Like, this is really exciting. It made the season different and more exciting, and people were interested in learning about the sport again, because in Wellington in particular, because there's so much sports competition. I don't know if you know this, but there's like 7 or 8 different sports going on at the same time. School is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, unlike Chicago, you guys are out of school. So, people are looking for things to do. Here, we're still in school. It's a lot to ask people to go to several sports, to pick polo, to go out several times. So, a lot of people were like, I've been there, done that. It's expensive. It was fun, but it's more of like a bucket list item than it is like relaxing or enjoying something.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to our other conversation in terms of attracting your audience and trying to create that balance, if you will, that it's not an invite only type of thing where you can actually come out to multiple games and not feel like it's a bucket list item.
Yeah.
We deal with that up here the same way. And it's a matter of, the price point. It's accessible. You can do it at a whim's notice. It's not something you have to plan in advance. And when you go there, it's leisurely, it's relaxing, where it's a great way to get outside and outdoors, get a tan, enjoy it, have conversations with friends and family. And that's it. And it's something that you want to go to day after day. And even when you can't find anything to do, hey, you know what? Let's just go to polo. You can always get a ticket there.
Yes.
So that's a good point. And I think a lot of clubs actually struggle with that too, depending upon where you are. That's something that I think takes time to do. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. I mean, when we look back at what are the biggest and strongest ways to market to your audience, word of mouth continues to come on top easily.
Always.
So as long as people are having a great experience and giving you great reviews, and they're going to tell their friends and their friends are going to tell their friends, that's the most powerful marketing tool that you can do. So it all starts the moment that people walk through your gate.
That's what a big challenge of the USPA is, the way that it's structured. And I understand why, because it's expensive to run a club and to maintain the fields. I get that. But when you want people to come into the sport, but you can't manage the experience of the customer when they arrive, There's no hello when you drive in after you spend $160 on a ticket.
Hmm.
You have to pay extra for a drink. No one ever asked you if you had a good time. No one asked you if you knew what was going on or tried to help you. There's a big disconnect between, at least here in Florida, I would say. I have been to Santa Barbara and I've been to Empire Polo Club, but I would say it feels like you are supposed to know what's going on when you arrive. And as a new person, that's incredibly intimidating. And I wouldn't give anybody a thumbs up if I felt intimidated or didn't feel like I had a good time.
Yeah.
So simple. That's what I talked to a few people in the sport, and I'm like, the methodology is so simple. It's just the willingness and the desire to really want it. And I think that a lot of people in the sport, they just want to play and they want to play, with great rules. And it's not about making it more accessible. So it really does feel like an uphill climb often.
Yeah, and it's just not even just the spectators alone. It's also those who are looking to get into the sport. They're trying something new. It might be a bucket list item. And I feel like, when I started taking lessons and I've seen someone complain about this when they start taking lessons, the pressure that they feel that after they've gone through the system to start investing in horses.
Right.
It's just like all of a sudden you had a great experience going through this and you're excited to continue and better your horsemanship skills. The next thing you know, you're pressured to make a $10,000, $20,000 investment. And it's
Right.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
hold on. I remember when I was with the USPA, we actually did a study on that. It's just like, look, you really probably shouldn't be even bringing the topic up and for like 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
not after the first year.
Yeah. Feeder system for sure.
I sometimes draw on the comparison of, people who are into sailing. I have my captain's license to begin with, and get that license took like 3 years to do. But even when I got it, could I afford my own yacht? No.
Right.
But there was systems and memberships in place that allowed me to take out other people's boats and enjoy it until I had the discretionary income to enjoy the luxury of sailing on my own.
Yeah.
And granted, there are programs in place where you can lease horses and what have you. I feel as though it's not prevalent in a lot of places. There's still that gap, and everyone's racing to get people to buy horses to some degree. And I know that's critical to certain people's lives in terms of making an income and so on and so forth. I've heard too many times the frustration of people who get into the sport and are pressured then to leave because they're expected to make this grand investment into the game that they've only committed themselves to a year or a season.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure for sure.
There is a lot of pressure, but if we can, from a spectator and even getting people into sport, if we can break down that pressure to make it far more accessible and treat people with the respect that they deserve and kind of just walk them through that and educate them through it, this sport can be successful on and off the field.
Yep.
So you went from the Gauntlet of Polo and now you got your work. What are some of the other projects that you're working on?
So our main focus right now is Global Polo TV. It was really an outgrowth of Gauntlet of Polo and the USPA's desire to live stream several of its top tournaments throughout the year. We found that the USPA really doesn't have a library of content. So we developed an OTT platform and stored thousands and thousands of hours of live game content and created an ongoing content schedule with USPA archived games, horse stories, player features, and then obviously live games. So, in order to launch that, obviously it took a huge investment financially as well as human capital in January. And then when COVID hit, we were kind of dead in the water with the live games. And that was the largest viewed content on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, we more than doubled the subscribers over the summer. And even into now, we have 8,600 subscribers since our launch in January. And now we're going to start selling polo passes beginning in January for the Gauntlet season, as well as the other polo games that are live streamed. And, a lot of people don't want to pay, but they also don't want to acknowledge the fact that it costs a lot of money to produce just one polo game, let alone the amount that the sport is spending and investing in. So we created this platform in order to help offset some of those costs that the USPA is spending to do those games. And it's not unlike any other sport. And it's definitely not unlike polo, given that England is charging, Argentina is charging, and the USPA's quality of games with their vendor, Chucker TV, is well above anything that you get in England. And even right now with ESPN in Argentina, we've heard some grumblings about the quality of the game, with just two cameras.
Oh, yeah. There's no question about it that the United States set the standard in terms of how you need to film and broadcast polo.
Yeah.
And a lot of that credit goes back to Mike Ferrara and Chucker TV and the guys, Matt Baker and those guys at Polo Channel. I mean, they really, really took the time to look at it from every angle, invested in it to, hey, this is how it's got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Melissa Ganzi and Mike and Mark for, they put a lot of money into polo in order to grow it and to bring it to people, whether it be on your computer or wherever else you're watching it. But they have a great standard. And what happens in the United States, and we see this even with polo, like if you play, it's more expensive than it is anywhere else because of the people you have to hire, the salaries you have to pay. It's just really different here in the United States. But that's what we're working on. So go out and buy a polo pass. If you are a USPA member, you get it for free, which is a really great value. It's a $200 value for the premium polo pass. And you pay $200 for your membership fees and you get a whole bunch more.
And that's for a full year, right?
Yeah, for the full year.
So technically that's almost comparable to any other over the top platform that there might be. I forget what Disney is. I forget what Netflix is and some of those other ones.
They're like $40. We didn't haphazardly come up with the costs.
Mm-hmm.
We actually hired a professional that has worked in rowing and Ivy League sports.
Mm-hmm.
And he checked what the industry is doing and what the industry could bear. And then we also took a look at what was going on in the polo world.
Yeah.
So we didn't just come up with the amount or come up with the packages. We based it on history as well as things that are happening in the industry.
And you're not just live streaming or broadcasting match, you're also doing OTT stuff. And now for anyone listening, OTT is what, over the top?
Yep, over the top, which just means that instead of just being on your television, you can have it on any device. So you can download it on your telephone, you can cast it to your television or have it on your tablet. And what's great about it for our standpoint, we work with a great vendor that allows us to create a library of content. So once we have enough content, we could be running polo 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the vision. Like you come to this site, globalpolo.com, and you can find polo at any time.
Mm-hmm. You're running also different highlights, features, behind the scenes type content as well.
Yes.
What is your overall vision for the Global Polo Network? Where do you see it from 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
So we're currently working on a 3-phased approach. Next year will be our second phase. The main goal in this is to bring more awareness to the sport of polo. So we will evolve from just being the OTT platform with the live games to transitioning live game content to a broadcaster. And you mentioned that in the beginning that we have been spending a great deal of money to broadcast polo on CBS, NBC, Eurosport, D Sport, and we've even dabbled with TVG. We believe that if we are on more often on a network, 6 to 8 times a year, people will begin to get used to seeing polo and then they will want to check it out more often.
Mm-hmm.
So our business goals are we focus on subscriptions this year. And then next year, we transition into having 6 to 8 events that are live on some network that we partner with, and we provide our media rights to them. And then from there, those consumers that engage with it on network television will have a place to come back to, GPTV, to learn more about horses and the players and the sport. That's the ultimate goal. But from there, you really can't negate that entire infrastructure that we talked about that needs work. And that is making sure that if someone's going to come out to a polo game, that they're going to have a great time and that they're going to be treated like they are happy that they're there. Or if they do want to take a lesson, where do they go? If they're not a beginner, where do they transition from being a beginner to a moderate player and not going to a player that's just looking to build a patron? But, there's all these layers that need to kind of be thought through, but we're kind of at the top of the funnel
Mhm.
in terms of marketing.
Has some of your ideas in terms of the frequency of polo being on major networks, have any ideas sprung up about doing something with, let's say, Netflix or even Amazon Prime? The reason I
Yeah.
bring that up is because there's a recent article about the Queen's Gambit that just came out, which is about chess and chess organizations and sales of chess boards, as well as memberships or the downloads of chess apps, have gone through the roof.
Wow. Seriously?
I read something where it nearly doubled downloads for chess games, or the purchase of chess sets and things like that was like 600% growth since like the Queen's Gambit. So I'm just curious as to whether a platform like that would drive interest in polo. And I mean, I'm a big Netflix guy and everything. And for those of you who are maybe not motorsports people, but I have an affinity towards Formula One. And I
Yeah.
know Netflix had a thing about Formula One where they would follow individual teams, and I found it to be fascinating. And it wasn't just because you're a gearhead, but the way that they're able to tie in the lifestyle, the science behind the sport, the engineering behind the sport is unreal. Far more interesting and superior than NASCAR, in my opinion. So I was just curious.
Absolutely. I mean, Netflix, Amazon, Flow Sports, Days on, ESPN Plus are on our radar, but have also been on the radar. The unfortunate part is it's like every time I go to a meeting, they're like, why can't we get sponsors? And
Hmm.
I'm like, the same reason we can't get broadcasters, because either it doesn't fit within their business goals. We were told that Netflix wasn't interested in sports or live sports.
Hmm.
They've dabbled in a few things, but it's really not part of their business goals.
Yeah.
And then with Amazon, the same thing. You don't see a lot of live game coverage, but it's difficult. It takes people who have relationships and ongoing relationships, and they want money.
Hmm.
They don't just take this stuff for free and then give you a check like a lot of people think. It doesn't really work that way. What we're looking at doing is trying to figure out, how do we reshift some of our dollars that we're spending in order to get more time by advertising in different ways on those networks. And it takes long term conversations. I always say, and you know this because you're in sales, but sponsorship deals are a long term play. It takes 18 or more months just to close a deal.
Hmm.
And people don't just say, okay, here's a check for whatever. And that's kind of where we're at. In the sponsorship world and in the broadcast world, we're kind of back in the game, and we've got professionals that are working with us. And
Yeah.
that's really key. You pay for the Rolodex and you pay for the relationships, not necessarily their education behind it. Because we know people like working with people they know.
Yeah.
And that's where it all comes down to.
And to kind of build on that, and there's kind of two topics to discuss. The whole entire sales process. Yes, it can take up to 18 months from the moment you start a conversation to a moment you close a deal. It also takes anywhere between 2 or 3 years for a sponsor to even see the momentum
Yes.
the brand has and associated with the sport, which is why some of the most successful sponsorships that you can see out there, that when you think of baseball, you automatically can say MasterCard. Or,
Yeah.
when you think of NASCAR, you think of FedEx. Or when you think of skateboarding, you think of Mountain Dew. It's a long progression. So, as a salesperson, you constantly have to keep them engaged and on the hook and really work very, very hard to make sure that those relationships are successful. One thing I've noticed, and let me know if you agree, is making polo attractive to those blue chip brands, those
Hmm.
brands that do have that large media spend on national platforms, if you will, versus polo, which is far more affluent, where it does attract your Maseratis and your Lamborghinis and your Rolls Royces of the world. Well, they aren't doing large media buys. So do you have that struggle a little bit?
Yeah. There was a couple challenges with sponsorship in polo. One very big One is that the scale isn't there. You look at like a marketing department at one of those blue chip brands. I mean, they want thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're only having an event once a week on a Sunday and you're only getting about 2,000 to 2,500 people, and then on your final day, you may get 5,000. You also have a very small email distribution list. You have a small social media following, and they're not unique. They're the same people. So you really only have a small group of people that you're talking to. The good thing is that they're highly engaged, which is what I try to tell the sponsors that I speak to.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we've knocked on every door and we have gotten meetings with lots of big brands. The challenge for them is that we don't have enough people. We don't have enough distribution. So even like with GPTV, we have 8,500 people, but that's really small when you're talking to an American Express that can go do a deal with MLB,
Mm-hmm.
or even the PGA Tour when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
The other really big challenge with polo is it's fragmented. What you get at one club, you won't get at another club.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been burned. They've been told that they'll get something and they don't get it, or they don't get the assets delivered. Because in my experience, there are not a lot of people that understand sponsorships or sponsorship management in polo.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people doing it. It's kind of like you're a plumber and you are really good at being a plumber. So you go and you start your own business. Well, you realize there's this whole other thing that goes,
Yeah.
with being a plumber, owning your own business, like running the payroll and hiring people. And you don't want to do that. You just want to fix the stuff. It's kind of like you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's hard work. It takes patience and it takes time, and it's all about relationships. And that is the biggest challenge with polo is they do not have patience.
Mm-hmm.
You sign up for a 3-year business plan and within 6 months, they're like, okay, well, what have you done?
Yeah.
What have you accomplished?
Yeah.
Like, it takes 2 years just to get this thing moving.
Yeah. We hit it on the button. I mean, the sports fragmentation is pretty astounding, and golf is fragmented.
Yes.
But you can replicate what you did at one tournament to another, which has a completely different organizer and ownership.
Yeah.
You can even do that with concerts, and that's completely different from one another.
Because governing body or the main concert promoter is the person that sets the boundaries and the rules so that you have consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to my original reason why I loved working with Bonefish Grill and with Outback Steakhouse is that they had a very methodical approach about every single store that they opened. They did it the same way every single time, and they hired and trained the people to have their values. You open the door for every person that walks in. If there's trash on the floor, everybody picks it up. Nobody's better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And every customer is treated like they will never come back. And that's how you treat them every single day. And if Polo could do that, if they could put in those emphasis on customer service and customer values, you would see tremendous change in Polo and the attendance and participation.
What sport do you think polo best emulates or could emulate?
It's really hard for me to say. I mean, lots of people think that it's like hockey on horseback or it's just another equestrian sport. That's what I hear a lot of people say. It's unique in the sense that these horses and the players train just as hard as people who play football and baseball. And the competitiveness is like a sport like that. But then there's also like an individual feeling of it, which is very relatable to golf. I don't know another sport. I don't play sports. I'm really just about the business of sports.
Yeah.
But you hear hockey on horseback, you hear equestrian sports, but I always say it's the best kept secret. That is one of the things that I truly believe, that you need a halo effect in any business, right? And you need a brand that stands for something. And Polo stands for luxury, kind of untouchable. And when you get into it, you realize that the people just love being with the horses, and they're in the barn all day. And if they're not exercising the horses, they're riding the horses. If they're not riding, then they're stick and balling. And if they're not stick and balling, then they're playing the tournament, or they're thinking about what tournament they're going to play next.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as showman as I think a lot of people think it is.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, if I were to categorize it, there is that team component and there also is that individual component, like you would see like with golf. And then like just like any other team sport, no matter what. Polo can play a lot of those narratives that other mainstream sports has been able to accomplish. I do think strongly that polo needs to do a better job of humanizing the horses in the game.
Yeah.
And you look at, just say like the Kentucky Derby, for example, no one knows the jockey at the end of the day.
I know.
It's the horse. And the Kentucky Derby, I mean, they put 10 hours of content together before a 2-minute race. And a lot of it is dedicated on the animal itself. So it's like, what can polo do to take that up a notch? I mean, when I talk to people about the size of the team, like, yeah, there's 4 players on a team, but there could be as many as 40 horses on a team. In terms of if I were to compare like the business side of things, where polo would best, I think, take some advice from or maybe try to emulate, I look at Formula One a lot. You know, Ecclestone, who created that essentially as the biggest promoter of the sport, it's one of those sports that, yes, it is catered to as affluent market, especially if you've ever been to a Formula One event. I encourage you to go to Montreal if you really want to experience, but also at the same time, it attracts those people who are just as interested in NASCAR and that want to watch it.
Right.
So somehow they created a balance between the two, and it is the most watched motorsports in the entire world. And from a business perspective, from the drivers to the owners of the teams, whether they're individual owners or patrons like they are in our sport, or they're manufacturer owned, in my opinion, there's a lot of similarities to some degree, but that's just my opinion. You can take it or leave it.
Yes.
Hey, Shannon, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation, shedding some light into global polo licensing and the amazing things that you guys are doing over there to grow our sport and increasing its visibility, as well as your perspective in terms of what clubs and other organizations need to do better, and even comparing those to your previous work within golf as other mainstream sports. So I really appreciate it, Shannon. Thank you for joining me today, and we expect great things from you and global licensing. And until next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks.
This podcast episode is presented by Global Polo TV. The world's premier destination for video on-demand polo content has arrived. Now you can watch the nation's best live and archive tournament matches and compelling behind-the-scenes content from anywhere at any time and on any digital device. Global Polo TV has over 9,000 subscribers, 200 plus hours of live broadcasted games, and over 500 hours of produced content from weekly shows to in-depth features. Sign up today. All on-demand polo games and content are free. Want to watch official USPA games live? Then get your Polo Pass today by visiting globalpolo.com so as not to miss this year's high goal season and upcoming 2021 Gauntlet of Polo. Welcome to Global Polo TV. Now we have reached the part of the show where we address outside the board's issues affecting the sport of polo, with the sharing of insights, ideas, and best practices towards solving everyday marketing, branding, and sponsorship problems, avoiding bad habits, or helping to navigate through new trends and how to best leverage those opportunities. Hi, everyone. On this episode, we are going to talk about Season 1 of Outside the Boards podcast presenting sponsor, Global Polo TV. So Global Polo TV was launched in 2020 as a new digital platform, has become a global premier destination for video on-demand polo content, or what is also commonly referred to as over-the-top content, with the production of daily live stream games, a weekly polo news show, weekly highlight shows, and other polo content regarding the sport, global news, its lifestyle, horse features, broadcasts, and archive games. Since the platform's launch in 2020, Global TV has accumulated over 9,000 viewers who have subscribed and tuned in to watch, I think, about 200 plus hours of live broadcasted games and over 500 hours of produced content. If you are a USPA member, you receive free access for
the year once you paid all your dues. And there's a variety of different passes, if you will, if you are a non-playing USPA members, that you can get access to a variety of different levels for the Gauntlet of Polo, USPA tournaments, and so on and so forth. So I highly encourage you, if you have not subscribed as a USPA member, or if you're not a USPA member, to go to www.globalpolo.com. So if you have been tuning into Global Polo TV, I'm sure you have been enjoying it as much as I have. And what I love about it probably the most is the accessibility on my mobile phone, which is great because I can listen in to games and the play-by-play action via my car if I'm traveling, or if I'm in the passenger seat, I can watch games clearly as long as I have a very good internet connection and can watch high definition video of each game. But I'm probably most a big fan of it is when I am working from home in my office and I have my flat screen TV tuned on to Amazon Fire TV and watching the Global Polo TV app and having the chance to watch live streams from there. That is probably the best because I can either watch it and stay in tune with it or have it on the background, either watching live games or watch existing games. And it's a fantastic resource to have. And believe it or not, Polo in the over-the-top content space is relatively new. It really has surfaced, I think, since probably the past 5 or 6 years, beginning with folks like Chucker TV and Polo Channel and groups like Polo Line, who eventually created their own programs, if you will. And the formation of the Global Polo TV as part of the USPA network is really the direction that Polo needs to do, not just to help monetize the sport, but also give it a platform to satisfy the needs of those who are active players and are fans of the sport, as well as attracting new fans into the sport as well. If you look across the entire spectrum, almost every major sport, B levels and C level sports, also have their over the top content channels themselves, whether it be the NFL, Major League Baseball, the USOC has an Olympic channel of their own. You have Formula One, and the list goes on and on and on in terms of the number of over the top content that you can see. So what is over the top content? I'm pretty sure you guys are all wondering. It's a common term that is used in the media industry to describe what things like Global Polo TV. So over the top content refers to film and television content provided via high-speed internet connection rather than a cable or satellite provider. So this is for anyone out there who are cord cutters and are looking to access their content beyond what your local cable company or satellite company can provide. So like I said, viewers who dislike paying for the bundled content are often referred to as cord cutters. Something I have to admit myself, I have been dabbling with. I have Xfinity or Comcast service up here in Chicago. I love it, but I only watch very few shows, and I am constantly on Amazon Prime or Netflix, and now HBO Max. You have Hulu. The list goes on, and I find myself watching those far more often, probably 90% of the time, and mostly using my cable for local television. So a lot of you people who are new to over-the-top content, you actually are not. And as I just mentioned, all of those groups, such as Netflix and Amazon Prime and HBO Max and Hulu, those are all examples of over-the-top content. So all of you are actually incredibly familiar with this whole entire industry to begin with. And you can go down a long rabbit hole in finding numerous different apps to support your binge watching need. And if you are a binge watcher of Polo, Global Polo TV is where you want to be. And it's only getting better. That's a great thing. This is in the starting phases of over-the-top content for Polo. So as it continues to progress, as it becomes popularity, and we understand the needs and wants of the viewer in terms of what they want to see, it could only grow from there. So I'm a big fan of Global Polo TV, and if you haven't downloaded it onto your TV or access it via Roku, or have the app on your phone or tablet, I highly encourage you to do so. Especially now, given it is the Gauntlet of Polo is getting around the corner, and a lot of the high goal polo seasons that are occurring right now with the Yugoslav Cup, Joe Barry Cup, and so on and so forth. You can access all of those games online. So it is really, really fantastic. Due to the pandemic and COVID-19, binge watching things such as polo or other content related to it is increasing substantially. So while people are locked in their homes, they can't do a whole lot. They can't really go outside. They can't do some of the normal activities and recreational activities that they can do. They're turning to entertainment on their screens. So secondary screens, such as your tablets and mobile devices and what have you, as well as over-the-top content, apps like Hulu are increasing dramatically. And we are seeing other sports take advantage of it, whether it be Formula One racing, chess, whether it be fiction or nonfiction or live sports content, short form content, whatever it might be, it is gangbusters for those sports and those organizations. One other thing I wanted to mention just recently, the United States Polo Association and Global Polo had issued guidelines for filming games. So, one of the things that we were up here in Chicago Polo is as a result of our attendance and the capacity percentage being cut down significantly, we were forced to look other directions to continue to engage our spectators, provide another alternative in terms of value for our sponsors to get involved. So we actually turned to live streaming and doing edited broadcast of our polo matches. And we actually stopped doing our magazine because we no longer had the distribution, but we could get the distribution via live streaming and providing edited broadcast for our games. And the United States Polo Association and the Global Polo issued guidelines for filming games that would allow clubs within their certain markets to invest in the resources that they need and follow these guidelines for their matches, either live streamed or edited for broadcast, to be provided and uploaded to Global Polo TV's on-demand section. So this is really, really great news for all of you out there who are looking to either experiment with this type of channel, further monetize and add value to your sponsorships, provide another level engagement, and attract people to your club and your matches and clubs, teams, and players of all the great activities and tournaments that are being held. So this is a very great value. So they issued those guidelines, and having reviewed those guidelines, this is achievable for all of you. It really, really is. And there are groups out there and there's equipment out there, such as, I think it's SportsCam is one of them, that allows you to invest in the required resources, equipment, and so on and so forth to televise and record polo from a elevated position, either to live stream it on Facebook, if you will, and well as record it. And also, there's many different applications such as YouTube Studio and others that are out there. If you are familiar with Final Cut Pro, and you can access other additional apps to include in those types of applications that would allow you to add a scoreboard, a clock, and things like that to enhance the production value overall to meet these guidelines. So there is a way, there are inexpensive ways to do it, but you have to be prepared to learn about all these additional attributes, or you can hire someone outside, someone locally to do this. So it can be done. So I encourage you to do it. This is a great direction that Polo is taking. It is highly valuable. So when you look at other sports that have been doing it, they've been doing it for quite a while. A good example is the United States Equestrian Federation. They have been doing this for quite some time with the USEF network. So those of you who cross over multiple different equestrian disciplines have probably been tuning into that. So again, this is going into the right direction, and I am very excited to see where it goes from now, the content that they produce, how diverse the content's going to be, humanizing the sport, humanizing the ponies, pulling back the curtain and showing the behind the scenes of our great game that we all love so much and we want to share with everyone else. Because as we know, yes, the lifestyle is very, very attractive, but there are also some very, very appealing things about our sport that people might have a false impression about or be excited to learn more about. I know that in my career within the sport and sharing all the exciting things that go behind the curtain, people are more attracted to this game than ever before. So it's not all about seersucker bow ties and popping up champagne bottles. There's so much more to this. So kudos to Shannon Stilson, kudos to David Cummings and the entire Global Polo Entertainment team for what they're doing. I know it's an incredibly hard work. Everyone essentially is looking heavily in terms of what they're going to be doing in the future. I hope they get more games and rights to more games, not just within the US, but hopefully overseas, to keep that level of engagement continue year round. Because if you're like me, I love to have polo on 24/7 in my office. So it's just what I do. Keeps me motivated. Working out every morning, click it on either Roku or Amazon Prime. That's where I get mine. Make sure you have a very, very good internet connection, especially if you have a home with lots of devices, computers, cell phones, tablets, and what have you. It's definitely important, especially if you want to watch polo in HD quality, because the better quality it is, the better it's going to show up on your television, and you can see the details of the game. And as you know, with 9 acres, that's a lot of cameras to film and see overall. But again, I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, go to www.globalpolo.com. If you haven't signed up already, again, all USPA members, provided you pay your dues, will get it free. And those who are not active members, there are many different polo passes that you can acquire. So again, kudos to Global Polo TV and their entire team for their hard work. And I hope to see you guys watching it, and I know I will be. So again, take care, everyone, and stay safe and stay warm if you're in the Midwest.
That was a great episode. What is the one thing you learned from today's conversation? If this episode had an impact on you in some way, then I encourage you to visit and subscribe to our website at outsidetheboards.com for more episodes and interviews with incredible guests. Thanks for stopping by, my friends, and hope to see you on the polo field.